welcome everybody to this. If you are watching on YouTube, welcome as well. I won't be monitoring the chat very often at YouTube. Tonight, Steve Fetter had another webinar, so I'm the second choice to manage this. And so I think I can manage the chat in Zoom. If you have questions, please come into the Zoom room. Please, a good etiquette. I've muted all of you. Now you can unmute yourself when you want, if you need to ask a further question, but please raise your hand otherwise and put your questions in the chat box. I'll be keeping a tally, and there will be pauses throughout to ask questions. So you will have ample time. And if not, we have email addresses for following up. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for making the time tonight, and welcome to Eric and Clyde and Angelica, who have given their evening to come and be with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kate. It's Eric Matheson. For those of you who follow my fashion choices, I've got the Hawaiian shirt, but I'm in the basement of my house in Toronto, following all the edicts as best I can, and I hope you're doing that too, wherever you are. We've got a fair bit of ground to cover tonight, so I'll get started. You'll know that you know, my first screen always is, I'm trying to move it now. Let's see. There we go. So we start with the creed always, and you know, as many headaches as we've had being treasurers this year, we do it out of love, and we do it because we're called to be the church, that, you know, that needs to guide us. It's been a very challenging 12 months to be a treasurer, and it looks like we might have a few more months of that before we make it to the next level. So tonight, what we're going to cover is a focus on year-end stuff, things you've been asking for. We finally got some great news on the PD27 form. You know, Clyde will talk a little bit about T4, T2200, those kinds of year-end things. We've got an update on some of the new things that are coming out to treasurers, in some cases even next week. And you can all read the usual stuff, some advice around budget and annual meeting considerations and so on. And then we'll take you through the various church programs. There's news in most of those areas. There was one announced just today, the one at the bottom here, HASCAP. But I'm pretty sure that doesn't apply to us. The language is very, very, very business oriented, as in not charity. Okay, so the PD27 form, finally, we're going to have the data for you in a way that is a pure handoff. The treasurer, you're going to need to submit the form locally, but we're giving you field by field data to complete the form completely, and we'll be just showing you what it looks like tonight. So again, if you have the capacity now, I certainly suggest submitting it online. Most of us have had to move into that space perhaps more than we used to. The form itself is very, very simple once you have the data. And we're still doing some checks. We've been looking at it for a few days now, but we're just double checking and want to take another day or two just to for more quality control. But it will be on the internet, on the payroll service webpage this weekend, and you'll see what it looks like tonight. So with that, Clyde, you've had a look at it already.
Yeah, there's your first look at the data form. That's a clip right out of the top of the spreadsheet that's been going to be provided. It's a spreadsheet that is quite comprehensive, but it has in it a place where you can put in your business number with your payroll portion, the RP as well as the zeros and one, and it will immediately go to your numbers. And the information is there based on the columns that are on the form. And I would suggest strongly that you verify the numbers. Relatively easy to do. I don't think I'd worry too much about the income tax, Canada pension, and employment insurance ones, but at least the gross remuneration number, if you give a handle on that and can verify them, then you're good to go. The big thing with this is, yes, I know we're getting down to the end of January, but the sooner you can get this information transferred to the form and get the form signed, the better it will be, because this form is going to show the difference, the discrepancy between how much is on the summary form for your T4s versus what you've actually paid. And with the PD 27 being filed and giving the government time to process them, then they will start sending out their audit letters to say that you're out of whack or that everything's fine. So it's just a matter of timing, but the sooner it goes in, the better. Let's go on to the next page, if you would, Eric. There. Now, we're actually showing the form here in front of you that is required, and this has to be filled in completely by yourself. On the top line, the complete business number with the program is already filled in, RP, and your 0001, 2, 3, 5, 12, depending on how many payroll accounts you keep. If everybody's on ADP, you've got one account, and it will probably be 0001. But if you do some of your own manually, you might have a second account, and so you just got to be aware of that. You have to file a separate one of these for each account that you hold. There's a few boxes there to check off, and obviously the one that we're going to be checking off is registered charity. That's the fourth one down in the list. Below that, we have a question about multiple accounts. And as I said, we've got to fill out a separate one of these for multiple accounts. But this is the box at part C where you will identify the fact that you have more than one account or not. And then we go into the calculated wage subsidy part. And this is where below these descriptions is where the actual data is. And what we're going to do is when we're looking at this in the descriptions, it's the total number of eligible employees employed. And that eligible employees, even if you had 5 of them in the turnover in the 3-month period that this applied for, all 5 go in. You may not have had more than 1 or 2 on staff at any given time, but all 5 do go in. We have to enter the eligible pay period. And the pay period may actually start before March 15th, which is the start date of this subsidy. But the important part is the date that we actually paid the people. And so that's important to remember. The rest of it is talking about the numbers. And it's important there that, as I said, follow the script that's been given us by ADP. Once it's been verified, put your numbers in, a different line for each pay period. Now, many of us are on monthly, so those ones go in 3 lines. That's it. That's the maximum. If you're on semi-monthly, you've got 6 lines to fill in. And I don't know whether anybody's got on any other, but there used to be one for every 2 weeks, so you could have 6 or 7 lines in a case like that, depending on when the paydays started.
Right. And Clyde, just a point of clarification, that's certainly the number of pays that you draw money from. But some folks who have an arrangement where there isn't much of an income tax bucket, they could have 10 or 12 or 15 lines.
That's not important in here.
Hmm?
That's not important on this, because all they're asking for is the wage subsidy that was claimed
in the particular period. Got it.
In that period, and the claim we might collect our money back from ADP or whoever's if we went directly to the CRA. you might end up with having a lot more claims of the money, but it doesn't report on here.
Right. So,
This is only for pay periods.
Tasting peanut butter for the first time. What in the world?
there we go. Okay, next slide.
Okay,
Taking
we're
topics.
moving over to the T4 form. The ADP did, when they sent out their test run in October, had these boxes already on, and I verified probably 5 or 6 of them, and I found no concerns with any of it. It was very well done. I really give my kudos to them, because I do know a couple of pay companies that had some problems with it. But these ones, I would just say that as long as the payroll, any audit you do of the T4s in the test run, you should have already caught it here, and we're good to go with the way they come off. Okay, for the tax year 2020, the CRA is asking us to do some accrual accounting. A good many of us do not do accrual accounting for churches, for charities. And the CRA Charities Directorate gives us the option to do accrual or not. My own feeling on this is that we don't have to worry about the accrual. And I'm going to state that. I haven't been able to verify it from the CRA, but their main goal here, myself and my peers all could see where their main goal was to make sure that it got reported as early as possible so they could collect their tax money. And whether that's actual fact or not, we don't know, but that's sure the way it looks like. So most of us will apply for our period 10 sometime after the end of December. And to go back and put it into our December numbers later presents a bit of a concern. So I wouldn't panic about it. I would just do it when, put it in when you receive the money in the bank account, the same as cash accounting. The CEBA loan, well, that's a horse of a different color, and it needs, well, as Eric said on the last slide, it needs its own slide. Your total loan is 40,000. This is one where you do have to take it into 2020. If you received your loan in 2020, the forgivable portion has to go into revenue. And the accountants that provide the tax tips, which we referred to at the bottom, have already had a lot of discussions with the CRA about this, and they will be looking at it and looking for this when it comes to doing any audit, desk audit, or how they, whatever they're doing with it to make sure it's been properly reported. T2200, this can be a bit of a pain for us, but the CRA has come up with a simplified form, and you really don't need to get into a lot of it unless you laid out a significant dollar values, or your employee laid out significant dollar values in order for them to work at home. They will be allowed to claim an amount per day on a per diem basis, up to a maximum of $400. And there's no verification required as to whether they're were told they had to work from home or whether they chose to work from home. According to the actual laws, it says they had to be told to work from home, but they're not going to be checking that. So it's the best way to go. In looking at the clergy residence deduction, I would question whether you could claim the T2200 as well. I'm not saying it can't be. I question it.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've put that extra statement there. Accountants may disagree. However you do it, as with everything you're dealing with the CRA on, document and document some more, and keep it handy.
And it's Eric, I'll just weigh in that a treasurer doesn't have to even do anything with the clergy residence deduction. It's up to the minister whether they, how they choose to treat that, or what some of them do have accountants and so on. Right now, the view is that it's an aggressive accounting treatment to claim the $400 when you've already got a deduction that you would normally deduct other home office expenses from. But this is the language, Clyde. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's what we were talking about when I said they're not going to be checking on this. It just assume that if you're working from home, you've got so much per day, and it's a maximum of 400. And I don't think anybody on the daily rate would have got to the 400, or very, very doubtful you'll get to the 400 in the calendar year. So we can carry there to the next one, the annual statistics. This is some changes that we're watching to make sure, and I suspect that Susan is on tonight to hear how we talk about this, but we're not going to have the federal grants. That is your CEWS, CEBA, the TWSE, or the what was the other one? CECRA. Any of those, that's not going to count for against you on your assessment. They're all extra. And the same thing will happen when we come to the T3010, and I'm not sure whether we have a slide on that or not, but they have to be reported as federal grant revenue on the T3010. So make sure you're able to identify it exactly. The average attendance, we haven't had to worry about ours with the people in person in our own church, but I sit there every Sunday morning and I count, and I don't look at just the number that shows the number of hits on. Like tonight, right now, we've got 271 hits, but on my screen, I can see at least 3 people that have 2 of you sitting at the screen. So each one of those would count as an extra person. And that's how you come up with your attendance. It's not hard to do, and it will give us a much better picture. And again, with my own church, we have found that our average attendance has increased about 15% during the last year. So it's great. And then most of that is going to be handled through Church Hub, and I really haven't had the time to find out about that. Eric, do you do that, or is somebody else going to cover that one?
Yeah, no, we'll be covering Church Hub in an upcoming segment tonight. So,
okay,
this is our first break for questions. I'm not seeing the chat box here in my view. So, if there's anything that's come up so far, please go.
I can see one question there from John Morton.
Yeah, PD 27. Sorry, do you want? Go ahead, Clyde. You do that, and then I'll answer.
Yeah, he was just asking about problems with CEWS for period 10.
Mm-hmm.
I've not experienced any problems with period 10. So I would suggest, John, seeing you filed that, as you say, on January 6th, that you would be within your rights to give them a call and see if they can identify any concerns on it. It would be well worth doing that.
So the questions are all on the RD27 form, are the ones that I've got. Just back to the basic, what is it and how do I get one?
Well, the form itself, the only way one gets CRA forms these days is online. So if you just Googled PD27 or CRA form PD27, you'll get, there's a fillable version and a paper printout version. Whichever way you're comfortable with, you'll need to complete it the way Clyde described.
Okay, so it's a Canada Revenue form. So people are wondering if ADP will help them with that form.
I think the short answer is no, but rather than sound unfriendly,
Mhm.
The form is really, it's about the simplest form there is.
Mhm.
What you're getting with the spreadsheet that we'll have available for you this weekend is the line by line input that ADP and our team have calculated. And so literally you would just take the numbers and transcribe them onto the form. The upper section of the form is very, very intuitive. There isn't anything complex about that form at all.
Okay. So the question too is,
It's a PD 27.
okay, that's what I was, sorry, yeah.
Okay, remember that, and it is available on the forms listing at CRA.
Mhm. And there's a question, do they fill out that also for the payroll that they do for music director, secretary, etc.?
It depends what they did. So again, those folks who have multiple payrolls, if you subtracted, if you claimed, if you took that 10% subsidy amount off of your submission, then yes, you would. But the ADP numbers are based on what was on ADP payroll. And some folks, we've obviously been encouraging you to, at least if I was a treasurer, and I have been, I'm pretty insistent about having one payroll. But if you claimed, then you would fill out a report for the stuff that you did yourself. If you didn't claim, or if you have a separate RP number, it really depends on the circumstances. If you did draw down that income tax bucket, then you have a report to make. If you didn't, you don't.
You can still fill out the report even if you haven't claimed, and it will become a credit on your account with the CRA.
Yeah,
So
and
it's not too late.
Yeah, that's a key point that maybe we haven't made in these slides, is the whole idea of rushing and having that support and the way it dragged out over the summer, all of that was to provide more immediate cash relief. If there's anybody on this call or on this webinar who didn't do it, and it depends what you did with your CEWS as well, but you are eligible and you could claim it still with submitting the T4 summary.
Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Could you please go over again the elections and choices that we need to attest as part of the wage subsidy filing?
Yes, Clyde is my guru on that, and we have some slides on that later on.
Okay.
There aren't any particular attestations for this PD 27. You're really just stating what you did.
And I'm sorry, I didn't put names with it, but there's a rather complex question involving a second payroll number, and it sounds like something to do with or dealing directly with ADP and correcting something. If you could send that in, please, you can send it to info@united-church.ca. We'll direct it to Eric or Angelica. It's a little more complicated than maybe we want to deal with here. But the final question for this section is, I had 4 payroll runs during the TWS period, the final one on June 20th, and subsequently received 4 different TWS subsidy rebates from ADP. How do I condense that into 3 lines on the PD 27?
Well, a couple of things. That 4th payroll doesn't count. Clyde will say this even better than I do.
Okay.
I think it went to June 19th, if I'm working from memory.
That's right.
And the spreadsheet is to consolidate the buckets for you anyway, because there's 3 lines that they're asking for. So that data is to be provided for you.
If your payday is outside of the period from March 15th to June 19th, then that amount does not count for TWSE. But if you're within that period, that even though it was earned in an earlier period, then it would count because it's payday that's important.
And I don't want to go back over old ground, but that was the first program, right? That was a little 10% program, and everybody was hoping that that's all that would be required. And of course, you know, there's billions and billions of dollars spent since. And so the CEWS kind of supersedes it, and the two don't necessarily hang together. Okay, well, we'll keep moving, and we've got a number of spots where we can come back if we've missed a question. Teampay, Angelica.
Hey, hello everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Angelica and I'm the HR and payroll manager. And I'm currently leading with ADP's collaboration, the upgrade of Teampay for all the pastoral charges. And this slide here in particular, I think Eric has already reiterated in the past from previous webinars. Online updating is real-time verification. Online report access, any browser device. These are the advantages if you sign up for Teampay. You're going to have the ongoing 1-800 support. There's a slight price increase, but it's well worth it. If we can go to the next slide. So most of you, or probably everybody, or you still haven't received, there was a communication that went out, phase 1 and phase 2 of the project. Phase 1 is currently happening right now. It started back in November and it's still happening until the end of February. If you're on that phase 1, then you probably have access to your reports only. You continue to do your payroll processing the same way as before. Nothing has changed. Phase 2 is where you're going to go live. The functionality of the system will go up live, but we're not there yet. That is not happening until at least March. We are currently in a pilot project with a few pastoral charges who have submitted their names. They want to be our pilot for the next month or so. So we are going to, on phase 2, look at enhancing the new hire payroll form, improved some of the tools, guides, and resources for you to be able to input the information. We're going to try our best to do one-to-one hand holding as needed. Can I go to the next slide, please? So just as an update in terms of where we are with phase 1, there was 4 waves and we're almost at 100% completion. We're at the last wave, as you can see, it's still 55, but all the other waves have been completed. The authorization letter that is required in order for you to be upgraded, we've received about 531 sign-offs as of January the 25th. So we encourage you to please sign the form and submit it to ADP.
Thank you, Angelica. I didn't want Angelica to read this slide. Just such a huge vote of thanks. So many of you have been working, first of all, gave authorization to let Angelica and her team be able to have access to your data so that we could be of support. But Henna, Olga, and Eileen and Angelica leading that team have had the most remarkable year supporting you folks, and frankly, this is the key thing for me, leapfrogging us into the future. I mean, the ADP system was a legacy system, and it took a while for us to find ways to get this kind of advancement. But online portals and easy access, and being able to double check your stuff immediately. That's not even 2020 type technology. We're just catching up in a big way, and her team have done incredible work. So I just want to say thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so we mentioned Church Hub earlier. So treasurers, if treasurers out there, you may know we've been launching an online portal across the country for all. It started out with search committees being the first need that needed to be met. Ministers were put on there several months ago. Church administrators have been added. And next week, you will get, treasurers will get an email broadcast around setting up an account on Church Hub with a treasurer view. And we're just going to load up the information on there. But you'll get, the mailing will be next week. Basically, it's a relatively straightforward sign up, but depending on your computer setup, you may need to reach out to our help desk, but it's generally a matter of setting up a user account. And at this stage, the thing we've been promising for some years now, having things that'll work on a Mac, on a tablet if you want, we're now modernizing, and all of those things are going to be going forward. We're going to really hope that as many people as possible use this online portal for submitting your statistics. We're looking for you, like, it's such a challenge to try to maintain email addresses and things by snail mail. By basically putting that control in the hands of a local church administrator, you can change that information. It's going to be way better to make sure that we're, all our various systems, whether it's pension and benefits or anything else, are talking to each other. So it's a huge breakthrough, and you'll see it. You'll hear about it next week, and we hope to have you all signed aboard in the month of February. There's not a huge training or anything required, but it's at that point, it'll be really handy for you to go online. So all treasurers enrolled, one-time setup. You'll, like everything else these days, you'll have a user account and a password. I'm thinking that most of you won't need that, but it's there for you, and it'll all be addressed in the letter. So moving to, lots of questions we've had about setting 2021 budgets and how do you get a budget approved, and what does the manual say? Well, I want to start off by saying the manual makes no mention of the word pandemic. COVID is more specific. So there's a whole bunch of stuff where we do what we need to do, and that's what you've been doing for a year now. So how much subsidy to budget for? Depends on your circumstances. In my budget, I'm budgeting for zero for the moment, and flagging it as it'd be a nice upside surprise, but I'm waiting to see, what my revenue trends are. I'm hoping that most of the hit was last year. If you're asking, when my home church, opens for face-to-face services, I have no idea, but we're in complete lockdown here in Ontario, and I think folks are in many parts of the country. So let's hope that with vaccination and everything, by fall, maybe there'll be some, herd immunity or whatever. That's all speculative. From a treasurer point of view, just describe for people, you still should budget, but just describe the variability. I presented the national budgets to the General Council Executive this past weekend, and I said this thing could swing any number of ways. Here are the assumptions we're using. Here's where we're being optimistic. Here's where we're being pessimistic. And that's about the best you can do. We have these other cost increases that we know are coming. Insurance premiums are still going up. The ADP cost listed here is really going to, by the time we look at how late in the year your phase 2 rollout will be complete, it will not be, it might be some tens of dollars, but it won't be a big number. So what we're saying there is you're going to need to ask permission. Like no one can hold anyone to firm budget numbers and say, stick with the budget this year. You have no idea, on the revenue side, there's just going to be a degree of fluidity. On the expense side, hopefully the subsidies and so on will help you avoid layoffs. And many of us are managing with higher numbers participating online, and we've gotten better asking for money. I think I might have covered this last time, but just to repeat, this is the formal words of the general counsel, executive, and the lawyers, and the manual and stuff. But basically, it says that you can, a board can approve a budget for operating purposes for now, and don't worry about AGMs. Though they can be helped, either have one electronically or hold off having one for the time being. As we all do the right thing about COVID. And then, this date could get stretched again. But the bottom line is you need to have an AGM, as soon as you can, and it might cover more than one period. That's the bottom line. And again, preparing for 21, the budget, I talked about wriggle room. Hopefully you've already, if you haven't, you're late on your compensation changes and updates to for ADP. The T4 summary, I flagged that. That's again a routine task this time of year. But if there is anyone out there who hasn't claimed the 10% subsidy and didn't take it into account or whatever on the Qs, you can still do it. We talked about the PD 27, as Clyde said. Now that we have the data, there's really, there's not a lot of thinking to do about it. I would pump that in next week if I were you. In terms of assessments and mission and service transfers and everything, we're still running skeleton staff. We still ask you to please consider electronic payments or setting up a core amount on par that works for you for these remittances. The fewer people that need to touch stuff right now, the better. And we're continuing to move away from checks, frankly. So these are the additional items. We're hoping your 2021 national church statistics are pretty important because that impacts the planning and the assessment rates and so on for future years. So a lot going on in 2021. So this is another one. I just thought I'd throw in a variable instead of my standard questions. And I have my mug right here. Any questions, Kate, that have popped up on this stuff?
Yes, a couple of questions that I've seen in other places as well. So maybe you could just quickly, before we go into Teampay, recap how people send in their M&S, the e-transfer for mission and service, and also for assessments.
Okay. In a nutshell, if you go to the COVID pages on the national website around COVID arrangements, we have this on the assessment page and I think on the M&S page. We have the mailing instructions. The mailing instructions are also on your assessment statement, which is still available the old way. I don't have the address at my fingertips, but basically, if you go to either the M&S or the assessment page, you'll see the electronic and PAR instructions and the mailing information.
Okay. So a number of questions on Teampay. There was a question about authorization, and Angelica authorizing letters. And so Angelica put that answer in the chat box of an email address that you can email any questions on authorization letters to. Somebody has a question, about how you get an authorization form for Teampay. So just send a note to that. Unless Angelica, you want to go over it again?
Or Angelica, isn't that authorization form on the same payroll page or not?
No, because it's a legal document. So if you can send your email to the payroll pastoral charge payroll team, I put the address on the chat box and we will be able to send it to you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And thanks for that reminder. Just so you know, we're always fighting for the easiest, fastest way to get something to you. But the lawyers sometimes disagree, and particularly when there's someone else's lawyers, we have to go along. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that.
Okay, so all questions for authorization, please send it to the payroll team, and the address is on that. People are confused between, and it's always hard to know, I think you just answered it, what's on the treasurer's area and when to call ADP. Any quick answer on that? Or
I'm sorry, what was the question?
the question
Kate?
is, people are confused somewhat on the slides maybe, what's in the treasurer's area and when to call ADP.
So I think the question was, it's a bit confusing whether it's the treasurer or
Yeah.
ADP authorized
Yeah.
contact. So the ADP authorized contact is the person who submits your payroll, whether it's the treasurer, whether it's the administrator, whether it's the bookkeeper, whoever that person is, should be the ADP authorized contact. They are the ones who submit all of the changes for payroll and submit payroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that's clear.
And I'll plead guilty on that one. All 2,000 of you, the treasurers, are being asked to enroll next week to do your normal stuff, to have access to the assessment stuff, to have access to your statistics. I used the phrasing ADP authorized on there. I should have adjusted it. It was a late change today. So all 2,000 treasurers are being asked to do that. On Church Hub, though, because sometimes folks aren't talking to each other, we will have your ADP company code there and also the name of your ADP administrator if it's different. Okay. So I apologize for any confusion.
So the optimum thing is people need to check their records. Does ADP update the EE benefit costs automatically, insurance, etc.?
It depends. I think the EE in this case is employee. It depends it does depend certainly for regular pricing, and Clyde, you can jump in too. For regular rates like core benefits and stuff, the answer to that is yes. If the employee has anything optional, you have to know what that is and use the tools for treasurers to get those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, the optional premiums you have to report to ADP so that they can be updated. The core, as you say, the core is automatic. We also have to tell them if there's any taxable benefit. And again, that comes off the tool for treasurers. It's a very handy tool that's sitting there. And I presume will become available on the hub.
Yeah, well, and right now it's if anyone wants to Google tools for treasurers or or do a search on the United Church website. I only go there once a year as a treasurer. When I'm doing the budget just to get the payroll numbers. And that's really what most of us should be doing. Once a year, you get the updated numbers. You use them for budget and for your annual ADP update. And the rest of the time, it should just flow.
Okay. And there's a final question on who will pay any TEWS balance, ADP or CRA?
If there is a balance that is owing to you, it will be added to your account for this year if it's needed. And if it's not needed, when they've done all their transactions and you've done your filings for 2020, then they may end up issuing a check to you, or they may ask you about rolling the money on over to 2021 account. To me, because of ADP doing all our payroll and submitting all our withholdings, the easiest way is to get a check from them, or not a check, but a direct deposit. You should be on direct deposits. So that's what will happen when it all gets reconciled.
Okay.
Great.
And
Thanks,
there was one further question that I didn't get in my own chat, but somebody asked if there's a separate spreadsheet for people employees, or I guess ministers over 65. Is it possible to have a spreadsheet that takes into account staff over 65? I had trouble this month to get the right numbers, and so our first payroll will need adjustments.
The treasurer's worksheet, I think, has a code there that you input that says they're over 65.
Okay.
I may be wrong on that because I've adjusted that sheet to suit me and a number of other things. So,
Yeah, and there's also an election there that people over 65 can make around ongoing deductions, right? Set for CPP, I think. So I think there is provision for it on the spreadsheet, but if not, please email us and we'll double check that for you.
Yes, and there was also a request to have EI and CPP payable by the employer church, if that's possible to add in.
That's part of what I have on my spreadsheet, which I've updated from what the church provides in the summer.
Yeah,
and
we've added a link actually fairly recently. This is for, I think this is for folks who don't, who aren't on ADP. We have added a table of all the different rates. There was, as most of you will know, there was a slight increase in the CPP federal rate and therefore the employer contribution as well this year. But we have that table on a few different places, on the Treasurer webpage and also on the Payroll webpage.
And the final question to Angelica before we go back to the presentation is moving to Teampay mandatory?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we certainly say so because the functionality, I mean, I can appreciate, I've had a few conversations like this with treasurers, and the functionality is worth it. If you're already trying to do something in between, or like if you're doing two payrolls, first of all, that's a self-inflicted wound, and you have to think about succession as well. And in the case of the being able to check your work, I personally can't imagine. I would quit as a treasurer before putting up with what some of you have done in terms of the wait queues on ADP. So having your own control of it is very, very strongly recommended. But we do need you to sign the form.
And just to go back one, there is no indication on the spreadsheet that comes out for the treasurer's worksheet for over 65.
Okay.
I was surprised, but I don't see it.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll certainly take that as a suggestion as well, because I know I had to manually adjust for that myself many years ago. But nonetheless, okay, we're going to keep moving. This is CEWS and a little bit just to give you a sense of what's going on with the other programs. We're going to speed up now. Yeah, I think we're still in good shape time-wise. Again, just a reminder for anyone who's new, this is this slide I've been running with for about a year now. The 10% you take out of the income tax bucket. You literally control it. We had ADP do it for you, or you did it yourself. And now there's this reconciliation thing with the PD 27. And if you didn't do it before, you can still do it now on your tax time, okay? This was the temporary short-term arrangement that was going to fix everything, and it didn't. And then all of a sudden we've got this very, I'm going to say, rich subsidy program at this, I call it 75%, and that's the right number for most periods, but it's been adjusted about 10 times since. And the links still are current, or at least I didn't check them this particular webinar, but I did the one before, so I'm hoping they're still right. So on the CEWS front, we're getting some direction. Period 11, 12, and 13 are defined. My message to all of you, those of you who think, oh, I didn't qualify back when they had the strict rules and stuff. I think a treasurer, I hate to say it, you should be doing this spreadsheet every month. You should have your revenue numbers. It's probably going to benefit you at some point, and at least you'll be making an informed decision if you choose not to file. So these are the defined periods now, and there'll be more language on the April, May, June stuff. I think some people will know this. For anyone who's claiming for period 11, I'm just about to look at that now. It's the same reference period. They're trying to, because of all the goofy date overlaps with the 4 weeks and stuff, they're using the same period. They're trying to do a bit of a reset so things align. But the main piece of information here is you don't have to figure this stuff out. Like, I've given up trying to double check. Early in the year, Clyde and I were checking their spreadsheets before we told you anything. I don't even look at them anymore. You've got to trust the worksheet. The documentation is way, way, way better. The spreadsheets, the online tools work, and they basically spew out the 4 or 5 or 6 numbers that you need to input for an online claim. Key fact for anybody: period 1 to 5, the deadline's in a few days. In fact, I think that's the weekend, so you've got 2 days. If you're impacted, I know of at least one treasurer who's working very hard on that today.
Yeah, filing these online, you've got until the 31st.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good point. And then after that, basically, I think it's it's a reset. It's 6 months. That's what all these dates are going to be. Yeah. I hope there's no one out there that hasn't filed their T3010. After the CRA has given you a 30-day deadline, you're almost certainly looking at a $500 fine if you haven't. But even then, it just you don't want to go into paperwork hell when there's so much other crap going on. So if you haven't done your T3010, get it out of the way really fast. I would note too, another deadline coming up is the CEBA deadline at March 31st. CEBA being the loan program, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So there was a question earlier about attestations and changes. Clyde, maybe you're my guru on this. Maybe you could take this slide and the next one where we have the sample tick box again.
Okay. The CEWS or CEWS or CEWS, as I like to refer to it. This is for adjusting your filings. If you've already done a filing and you have to adjust it, I did a filing for December for my own church, and I now find that I have to adjust it. So I have to go in and use one of these forms. The advice that I got by telephone, and the person was really nice about it, but she said, I can't put it in writing for you. So know that these things are meant more for major changes, might flag a review. If it's a minor change, use the form and do it. If you get 3 consecutive periods where you're making the same change now, it might flag a review as well. But again, weigh your options. Is it worth it? It depends on what assumptions you've made and what it is that you've got to adjust. The comment was made to never change line C2 or C3, because we should know that before that information before we even get started in filing a CEWS claim. You only provide the information that's necessary for it, and the changes, you want to change periods 1 through 5, again, have to be in by January 31. The deadline is for changes as well. So that's the best I can give you at this point on that particular form. The elections and attestations, first off, you had an option in period 5 to be able to change the reference period. Most of us are probably using month over month compared to the 2019 similar month. And we're not too worried about changing it. But in some cases, it might be better to change it and have use the January, February of 2020 average. To the ones that I've been working on, I have not found that an advantage at all. So, but it's worth checking it to make sure. Once you get to period 5, you have an option to change which your election is. But once you've made that change, you're stuck with it right through. And it says here periods up to 9, but this is because it's an earlier slide. It has to hold even through periods 10, 11, 12, and I believe 13 as well. You just have to be aware of what period you're looking at. So let's move to the next slide if we could. And these are the attestations. I'm not going to run through them all, but the boxes 1, 2, 4, you could be with multi-point pastoral charges. Be sure to read them. If you've got concerns about any of these attestations, don't hesitate to write in an email to the CRA help desk at United-Church, because Rose has become very proficient in answering these, and she's done a very good job at it. And I know how proficient she's become because I get fewer and fewer follow-ups on it. The box 9, it excludes the government income. So that means when you're reporting these, any of your grants that you've got from any of these subsidies do not count in your revenue for the current year. If you do count it, you don't check off box 9, but to me, I would rather take and not count it for the revenue because it keeps the drop a lot lower. And box 10 is allowed compensation exceptions, and I don't think any of us have got into that area. It's a very rare one to be concerned with.
So I'll just pop back in terms of provincial grant programs. A lot of these have wording challenges. So in Manitoba and Newfoundland, they originally were aimed at corporations, even though they wanted to support charities. So Manitoba changed their criteria online right away. And I know a number of charges have applied for the small grant there. I hadn't heard that in Newfoundland, but I just heard yesterday of a couple of churches that got the $5,000 and $10,000 programs there. The application windows are in those early cases are closed now, but this is more for information. If there are other provinces that you're asking about a program or something, let us know. We can have a look at it. The most common problem to have the United Church included is the fact that they tend to assume that congregations are separately incorporated. So we're a bit of a square peg in a round hole in that regard. And we have had success lobbying for eligibility. Okay, so we talked earlier about this CEBA loan goofy accounting, but again, I think this might even be a duplicate slide of the one I moved up. The bottom line being,
Eric, your slides aren't on the screen, I don't think. It's showing.
They are for me.
Oh, I see Teampay rollout. Maybe I'm the only one.
Frozen, perhaps. Here, I'll just move back and forth.
I'm at CBA loan accounting.
Yeah.
Yep.
You might recheck your connection. I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of whoever spoke.
Could be a frozen screen thing. But I think we're good. And so even if you need to come back in, you could try that. In any case, the CEBA loan, the main point being that, Clyde talked about the goofy accounting. I think this is actually a duplicate slide. The deadline is March 31st. Apply online. Now, I've had a few people question the online application because it tends to have the corporate wording. It tends to talk about corporation, a T2 corporation. A number of financial institutions have never updated their language for the changes that we were able to lobby for last spring. So I keep saying absolutely apply online, and you can even track your application now. They're getting better and better at that kind of thing. The rules are here mainly for folks who maybe didn't try it originally and might still be eligible. If you're applying now, you're applying for the 60,000. If you applied and got the 40,000, the 60,000 follow-up is almost automatic. You basically apply online, and again, the tools. There's a connection to the CRA system that did not exist previously. So your decisions get decided now online in a period of a week, whereas in last spring it was weeks and months. I think Edna Cook was waiting months for hers out in Nova Scotia. So the key point being on the next slide, really, this is the wording that changed. And I have had to send probably about a dozen letters, typically to credit unions, explaining this point. They've said, well, hold on, we read this stuff and we don't think you're eligible. I said, well, hold on a second, go to the CEBA website. The CEBA website, the official thing, says something different from what some of the bank forms say. And the key change here is there's mention of a regular supply of property. So that means rental income, line 4610, or sale of goods and services, which is less likely. Don't want to talk too long about this. You're either eligible for CEBA or you're not, and lots of people don't have this type of income and therefore aren't eligible. But if you are, it's an obvious source of funding. There had been clarification on what the money's for. The most important, it can't be just to invest. You need to be able to say, put it in your general account and pay bills and stuff, and be able to show that you had, not that you might have already paid those bills and drawn down your cash, but you at least had those expenses. That's a key point through all of this.
Yeah, you have to show at least $40,000 or $60,000 in expenses similar in these categories within 2020.
Yeah, great. So now the CERS program was a real boon as far as I'm concerned, because it didn't work. The whole, it was creating work for us as tenants, as local churches who had tenants. And now your tenants can apply directly, and they're getting their payments faster, and it covers off a certain amount of these various expenses. So initially I thought, great, you just took us out of it and we don't have to even think about or worry about this. As with all CRA things, that evolved a little bit. There is a possibility the qualifying property could be one that you own and use in the court. So there is a possibility that for some of you, if you have, in particular, if you have significant commercial loans, which is a very small percentage of you, but if you do, you might want to have a look at the CRS program. Everyone I talked to so far, when we looked at their numbers, it didn't make sense to apply.
Yeah. This one has even more restricted use of the funds.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think I talked about this on this slide: property tax, insurance, and basically mortgage debt and commercial mortgage debt. It can't be a United Church loan, for example. So, I've got the language here for folks, and you have access to the slides. If you think there's any chance you're eligible, you could have a look at this more closely. But my conclusion so far is I haven't seen one case where it fits. Now, the one exception could be if you don't own property and you are a tenant. If you pure rent and your expenses have gone down hugely, like the 60-70%, this still could be attractive to you. But again, that's a relatively few congregations in the country. So property and similar taxes, property insurance, and interest on commercial mortgages, as I've said. So folks, we're moving into the home stretch a little bit, switching gears even. The insurance market is still crazy. I mean, we looked at some big increases in the last half of last year, and it doesn't look to be getting better. But I wanted to flag for you a couple of things. That's happening. That's not just, say, with the United Church sponsored program, which we have with RSA and Northbridge. We actually had to partner with another company to help keep the rates down. But they're also being way stickier on administrative stuff. My own congregation was asked for an application. They hadn't done one in a long time. But the rule is if there isn't a current application on file, if it's been more than 5 years, they're asking you for a new one. They're asking for inspections in some cases, and we're trying to help with that and to avoid inspections by trying to use a rough calculation when you do fill in a new application. We're hoping that there's less upward pressure on claims, but right now I'm not feeling confident about that. So I'm just giving you a heads up. And we've had a few questions about empty buildings. Empty buildings are actually higher risk. Your premiums actually go up if you have an empty or closed building, because those are the ones that are most subject to the worst stuff, vandalism, arson, and so on. Specifically now, and I didn't know about these until some of you were complaining, so it's great to hear back. If a building is over 35 years old, the insurers are going to ask about your heating, plumbing, and wiring, and any updates. If there haven't been any updates, they're a little concerned, and they're going to be requesting appraisals more often. Something you've been asking me for is the names of appraisal companies. So here's a list of 5 of them that are the most regular ones that our national insurance broker sees from different parts of the country. Okay, United Church loans. So you'll recall that this is a streamlined $10,000. Right now it's $10,000. It could go up. Any program related to the pandemic has evolved or changed. So just to say, though, there's bound to be some flexibility here on dates and so on. But this is a preferred vehicle. It's going to be very tough for you to get lines of credit locally. I had been willing to sign anything, local, guarantees. You deal with your local bank, I'll sign a guarantee. But the banks aren't wanting that at all. Our national bank doesn't want that, and the local banks are wanting to underwrite the national church every time, and it's a mess. So what we're hoping to do in those situations is make available the loan program with up to $10,000. And again, that amount could go up, but I encourage you to use it. If you're struggling to pay the bills, if you're struggling to pay your assessment, this could be a way to do it. We think that this program will become an even more important feature in 2021 as the government does move to wind some of this stuff down. So I really want to highlight this program and to remind you that there's an expedited region approval. Any of your regions, you literally just, like if you go to the national site for this and click on the online application, it automatically goes to your region for a quick approval. The published beginning and end dates, you'll recall that there's a rebate for forgivable portion on a $10,000 loan. There's a $500 forgivable portion. If the loan is repaid in full by I think the end of 2022, if I'm not mistaken. All those things make this one of the solutions that we try to make work internally as opposed to through the federal government. So there's the web link, and for those of you who are trying to write that down or have it pasted in the chat box or whatever, just Google United Church Emergency Loans and you'll get the same result. So that's an update on the various programs. Let's see what questions we've got. What we have left beyond this, I've got a variety of slides that I'm not even going to show you tonight, but that will be available on the slide deck. They deal with some standard questions that people have about receipting, about honorariums, about a bunch of things. I leave those slides at the back of the presentation so that if you do, request the slides, there's some additional information for you. Questions, Kate?
Yes, so just a couple for Angelica on Teampay. Question was, when was the notice about the authorization sent out, and how can people check that the letter was signed by their pastoral charge in case it went to somebody who wasn't the treasurer or somebody else?
So first and foremost, you might have received an email from ADP letting you know that you have been upgraded. If you have received that email, then you can request for the acknowledgement form. Again, the acknowledgement form can be requested by sending an email to the payroll email address.
Okay.
If you haven't received an ADP email, then you have not been upgraded as of yet.
And so those emails would have gone to the contact that ADP has on file. So
That's right.
If you're unsure, check with whoever is your ADP contact. Is probably the best advice.
Yes,
so,
and also, sorry, Kate, you can also send me an email. If you send me your ADP company code, I would be more than happy to check.
Great. Thank you, Angelica. Somebody said they sent in their Teampay acknowledgement on December the 8th and they haven't heard back. Should they assume they're still in the queue?
Yes, you are on the queue, but again, send me an email, I'll double check for you and confirm for you.
Thank you. The rest of the questions have to do with CEBA and CEWS, or CEWS, however we pronounce it. One of the questions, back to this question we had a lot last year, for the CEBA loan was, I confirm I am not a registered charity. Does that disqualify us from the additional loan? I think you answered that earlier, but do you want to just...
This is where the wording on certain of the bank forms is not consistent. You can go ahead and proceed because the actual CEBA documentation on the CEBA website has been updated, and you can do that with a clear conscience. We fought long and hard for that.
Thank you, Eric. That was, no, I remember it was a tough fight. Questions for, I guess, to go to Clyde on attestations. What happens if you miss checking one of the boxes in the attestation?
My guess is probably nothing, unless they come across your particular case and decide that it's one they're going to be looking at. And all that can happen is you've made an honest mistake and you'll correct it and they will buy that. They're not out looking to penalize anybody. They want to educate. That's the CRA's whole philosophy. So I wouldn't panic about it. The attestation, you don't send it in anyway. It's just a signed form that you have available to say that you've done these things.
Yeah. And you could even just have a look at each of them now and double check what you did.
Right.
Sure. Just go back and correct them all.
Somebody said, who could I speak to about the CEWS attestation?
Send the questions to the CRA help at united-church.ca, and Rose will gladly direct it to one of the others of us.
and I have this stuff on a next slide, has these contact points.
Yeah, we'll have all of the contacts, and also all of these slides will be posted. The deck will be posted on the United in Learning website, probably, if we're lucky, starting tomorrow. Is the form that we submit to the government to show we had, oh, sorry, is there a form we submit to the government to show we had the appropriate expenses against CEBA?
Not at this point.
Okay.
No, and I don't think there will be. I think the only way, and this is conjecture, folks, like they're making it up as they go, but I think to the extent that they do any form of audit on the loan program, then they could come and ask you, or they could ask to see your financial statement that you would have those level of expenses. But it would have to be in an audit or an information request format.
And that is why we say document, 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 so that you've got it available when they ask for it.
Question, why do we care if the $20,000 CEBA is taken into income in 2020? Do we need to include it when applying for CEWS?
My own feeling would be that we don't include it because that's a government subsidy. But it's going in, as I said before, in 2020, because the government has set the rules for accounting for that to be in the year that you receive it, or in the period that you receive it. It has to be accounted for as revenue. It is more geared to the corporation side of things, but we've been told we should be following that same rule with that.
Yeah, and
If you haven't done it,
I'll answer it slightly differently too. And Clyde is the professional accountant, right? We don't care, period. Yeah. However, it is the rule that the government set up solely so they can tax for-profit corporations on it. Okay, and we don't care, and we, however, we've been told we should do it this way, so that there it is.
There was a question on whether if a congregation received the $10,000 forgivable loan, is that considered income in 2020?
The 10,000 forgivable loan. So I'm just
from the one United Church.
I think so. I'm just trying to go back through the question. I apologize.
First of all, a loan isn't, in the case of the United Church, it's not revenue anyway. It's a loan, and that's true for the loan portion. So if we're talking about the $10,000 loan, don't worry about it.
And
go ahead.
And the next question is the repayment still September 2021?
Probably not. COVID's supposed to be over. It's not over. I just haven't looked at it. I would say that it'll extend at least to the end of 2021 and possibly further.
Okay, and those were all most of the questions that I got.
Okay, and I just want to reiterate again: use that program. If you're in dire straits, that's that's a very fast way to get money, and I'm even advocating you use it. We need folks' assessments too to keep the lights on, and it can be used for that purpose too. And hopefully, we're a lot stronger a year from now.
I just see one more question on here from Ray Marshall that I'm going to address, the PD 27. He wants to confirm PD 27 is for those who received the 10% wage subsidy and not the CEWS, originally 75% subsidy. The PD 27 is strictly for the TWSE subsidy, which is the temporary one, the 10% one. It has nothing to do with CEWS. And if you did not apply for it, then you should be filling out one of these forms anyway. If you don't want to get the subsidy, just put in that you've claimed 0%. It asks what percentage you've claimed or will claim on it. Just put it down as 0, but they're going to be looking for this form for every payroll account.
Okay, folks. So again, we have the help desk, which was originally set up to help you navigate getting on board with the CRA online registration. Most of you have gotten there now, but we're answering a broader range of questions there. And Rose Camborne and Carla Hacker helps out, and Clyde does the complex ones. That's worked out really well. I'm going to move us on to.
Oh, excuse me, Eric. There's just one question. Somebody has politely had their hand up. Ted Myers, you can unmute yourself if you want to.
No, I got the answer to my question. It's fine. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I shall lower your hand.
Okay,
great.
Thank you.
And again, my email address is here. You can leave voice messages, but email is something that I can deal with. 18 hours a day while watching a hockey game even. So I encourage that method. And I'm going to close with something that we had last spring, and it really hit me Jennifer Henry is a personal friend of mine, and at Kairos, and she wrote this prayer last spring, and it still has legs. You know, we'll get through this, and yet grieve that so many will not. We're in this together, yet we know the huge chasms in our experience. You know, let's bear in mind that we're still doing the work of the church through all of this. And thank you for being a treasurer. I've said that's part of my shtick for years. I said it because I'm a treasurer myself, but 2020 and now 2021, more is being asked of treasurers than has ever been asked. And so thank you for what you do for our church, and embolden us in our dreams and gestures, as it says here. So thanks, everybody. Keep those questions coming up. I think we're going to be doing these sessions monthly now. There isn't that much changing. And feel free to send in suggestions, questions. We will answer them in the interim, but it tells us what you most likely want to hear in a webinar as well.
Yeah, if one person's asking, there's probably 10 others that want to know as well.
And for the evening, I say,
yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you for coming.
Into our little room.
I will take you into our room. I'm going to stop recording, and excuse me, I'll take everybody into the breakout room. Thank you, everybody. And the slides will be on tomorrow.
Good night, all.
Good night, all.
Good night, Ray. He's on my screen.
I'm just waiting until it drops.
Good night, Eric.
Get it drop.
Where's the leave? Oh, there's my leave. Found my leave.
Okay.
It was great, folks, but Angelica was the star.
She was.
I was not the star.
Absolutely.
Like any other.
There's
Don't make me laugh.
Absolutely, totally, completely.
Alan, as somebody said earlier, it's a rose
Did I
between
unmute
two
him?
thorns.
Did I unmute Alan? That was a big, I'm so sorry, everybody.
You're so funny.
Angelica certainly has the nicest hair, but that's a low bar.
And now that he's here, I'll invite him to our room. Okay, I have to invite. I'm glad you're all at the upper end of the alphabet. It makes me easy. It's easier to find it. All right, I'll say goodbye to everybody who's still online, and
off we go to our room.
Up to our room.
Go to our room. And what happens in this room?
Mm.
This is my first time going to this
I guarantee
room.
it'll be short.
Sorry.